I can still recall the moment her message appeared on my screen. Just a short, casual sentence, yet it carried more venom than she could ever comprehend. "Don't worry, I'm at a friend's." My thumb hovered over the keyboard for only a heartbeat before I replied. "I'm at my lawyer's. Don't come back." There was no hesitation. No internal debate. Only that cold, unmistakable clarity that arrives when trust shatters beyond recovery. Her name was Emily, and for 4 years, she'd been my world. Together, we had built what others called an ideal life, a comfortable apartment in the city, our familiar routines, our private jokes that made strangers smile. But perfection, I learned, is often a disguise. Behind Emily's laughter lived a growing distance, a wall I could no longer scale. My willful blindness mistook her indifference for affection, her silence for peace. That morning at work, I noticed the first crack. The way her phone buzzed, and how her eyes flicked toward it. Quick, nervous, guarded. When I asked where she was headed later, she hesitated just a little too long. I didn't want to believe my instincts, not yet. But years of reading people had taught me one thing: intuition doesn't lie. Something was wrong. The rest of the day passed like a blur. Meetings, calls, reports. All of it dulled beneath the weight of that growing suspicion. When I finally came home, she was already gone. The apartment felt colder, hollow, as though the walls themselves were aware of what had changed. Then her text arrived. I didn't respond right away. I let the words linger, heavy, cutting through the fragile illusions I'd built. A steady, almost detached part of my mind, half shock, half habit, recognized the truth instantly. This wasn't a harmless night out. It was a statement, a quiet rebellion that spoke louder than any confession could. So I sent my reply. Simple, final. I'm at my lawyer's. Don't come back. No explanations. No begging. No emotional theater. Just truth. And the moment I pressed send, a strange calm washed over me. The tension that had been coiled inside me for months began to unwind. All the suspicion, the sleepless nights, the forced patience. Because sometimes freedom doesn't start with confrontation. It begins the moment you accept that the bridge is already burned, that love cannot resurrect what betrayal has turned to ash. The hours that followed were oddly serene. Emily must have expected panic, calls, texts, pleading. But I gave her silence instead. Silence can say more than any words ever could. At the lawyer's office, I signed a few papers. They were mostly symbolic, but that symbolism mattered. Every stroke of the pen was a declaration, an acknowledgement that denial had ended. I thought back on the things I'd ignored. Her exaggerated laughter at nothing. The way she shrank from my touch. The way her eyes would light up when her phone lit up. I'd written it off as exhaustion, stress. But deep down, I had known. I just hadn't been ready to face it, until that text stripped away my excuses. When I walked out of the lawyer's building, I felt something close to peace. Not happiness, not even relief, just clarity. The kind that demands decision, that refuses compromise. She had made her choice. Now I had made mine. Returning home, I moved through the apartment like a stranger exploring unfamiliar space. The living room, once filled with laughter, felt foreign. The kitchen, where we'd cooked countless meals together, had lost its warmth. Even our bedroom was just an echo of what used to be. I picked up her favorite mug, studied it for a moment, then set it down. No emotion, no bitterness, just acceptance. That night, I didn't wait for her to call. I didn't check my phone. I sat on the balcony, watching the city stretch endlessly below, letting the cool air clear the last of the fog from my thoughts. I replayed everything that led us here. The joy, the cracks, the slow decay, and realized something vital. Betrayal isn't always about the act itself. It's about the quiet arrogance it takes to cross boundaries you once promised to protect. When Emily finally returned, the apartment was silent. She had expected chaos, tears, anger, pleading. What she found instead was composure. I had already packed a small bag with what I needed. She looked at me, guilt and confusion flickering in her eyes, and I knew it was over. The woman who once believed she could twist my devotion now stood in front of the one truth she couldn't manipulate. I was done. Emily froze in the doorway, searching my face for some reaction. But there was none. The anger had long since burned out. There was nothing left to salvage. She stepped forward hesitantly, as if crossing some unseen boundary. I didn't move. I didn't need to. The walls, the furniture, even the air between us seemed to affirm what she refused to accept, that it was over. She finally spoke, her voice trembling. "Mark, we can talk." I shook my head. There's nothing left to say. The words fell heavy, final, absolute. She looked around, realizing the space we'd shared now mirrored the emptiness between us. Then, in one last attempt to reclaim control, she pleaded, "Please don't do this. I can explain." I let her speak, but every word sounded hollow, excuses wrapped in desperation. None of it mattered anymore. The truth was already clear. I thought about the years I'd compromised, the silences I'd swallowed, the betrayals I'd brushed aside for the sake of love. But love without honesty is nothing but a lie you tell yourself to keep from breaking. I lifted my bag, paused at the doorway, and looked back once, not with regret, not with pain, but with understanding. She stood there, frozen in the wreckage of her own choices, realizing too late that actions carry consequences. I stepped outside, into the night. The city stretched endlessly before me, bright, indifferent, alive. And in that indifference, I found freedom. Freedom from deception. Freedom from the weight of betrayal. Freedom to rebuild on truth instead of illusion. Because sometimes the most painful realizations are the ones that set you free. The love I once had for Emily didn't disappear. It simply evolved into clarity, into acceptance. Some stories aren't meant to continue. Some doors, once closed, should never reopen. That night, I didn't walk away defeated. I walked away finally whole.